Greetings, I'm Cam Miller, and this is Team 64, a deep dive into the 1964 Cincinnati Reds, who were involved in one of the most thrilling pennant races in baseball history. Thank you for once again taking this journey with me as we episodically look back at this club 60 years later. On July 1st, the Reds sat 5 games over 500 at 39-34 and in third place, a position they would be in for most of the summer. In fact, from July 1st to August 15th, the Reds would never budge from third place, with the Giants and Phillies battling out ahead of them. With a 7-4 loss on August the 15th, the Reds found themselves 8.5 games back, the furthest they'd been back in the standings all season. But by September 1st, the Reds had clawed to within 5.5 games. But the seesaw summer continued, as they would once again fall to 8.5 games back on September 15th after a loss to the Cubs in Chicago. But then on September 20th, things began to change. The Reds were looking to take a 3-game set versus the Cardinals, who had climbed back into the pennant race at Crosley Field. Before the game, Reds manager Fred Hutchinson, who had turned over his managerial duties full-time to the first base coach Dick Sisler in August, made an appearance at Crosley Field and did an interview on the radio with Claude Sullivan. It would be his last radio interview.
Well, our guest on this edition of Diamond Dope here at Crosley Field is Reds manager Fred Hutchinson. We'll be talking with the Cincy manager here in just a moment, but this is Claude Sullivan thanking all you people for joining in the big WCKY Partridge Meet the Player contest. The response was just great this season, and we're very grateful to you. Our congratulations from WCKY and Partridge once again to all you winners. Remember, when you go shopping this weekend, the way to add zest and nutrition to any meal is with delicious partridge meats from the H.H. Meyer Packing Company. Well, as we mentioned, our guest here this evening is Fred Hutchinson, the Reds manager. Hutch, have you been listening to these games in the last few days?
Been listening to all of them, Claude, I'll tell you. It's been quite enlightening.
Hutch, what about listening on the radio as opposed to being in the dugout?
Well, of course, it's a lot tougher, I'll tell you that. When you're sitting there watching it, you're sure of what's going on. Not that you don't give us a very vivid description of the game, but it's still a little bit different.
A little wearing on the nerves that way, isn't it?
That's right, waiting for what the result is.
Hutch, I guess everybody has looked at this pennant race 700 different ways from the way it stacks up now. How do you look at it?
Well, of course, it's going to be tough. There's no question about it. And you get down to this point, you just can't afford to lose ball games. And, of course, the others are in the same situation as you are. Everyone is in the same predicament, so you can't let up for a moment.
Hutch, without knowing how each team is going to play, can you tell whether the schedule really favors one of the guys or not?
I don't think you can, Claude. Standings at this time of the year don't seem to mean a great deal because the clubs that are on the bottom usually are free and easy. There's no strain. And the clubs that are at the top naturally realize that they can't make mistakes. And so it about evens itself up.
Hutch, looking at the contestants here for this thing, looking first at the Cardinals, they're the club that's got the momentum. How do you look at their chances of finishing up on top?
Well, they're very good. As you said, they have momentum, and so does our ball club. Our ball club has been playing great ball. Their loss last night, the 2-0 loss, was just one of those things. But the Cardinals do have the momentum. Their pitching is in good shape, and they have no injuries. Their ball club is playing good ball right now.
Hutch, what about the loss last night? How does that affect our ball club at this point?
Oh, I don't think it affects them. Naturally, it hurts to lose, yes, but Billy McCool pitched an excellent ball game, and we just didn't get the breaks, we'll say, at the right time. They made a couple of good plays on us, saved the runs, and consequently, when that happens and you don't score, there's not much you can do about it.
Hutch, do you believe that the percentages begin to mount up against you when, say, the Cardinals now are trying to beat a ball club that's been leading the league for well over 100 days this year for a 10th straight loss? Do you think those things begin to well up on you?
Well, there's two ways of looking at it, Claude. the one club is still fighting to get back in the lead, the Phillies, and naturally they're a little tensed up, and also in losing all those ball games they're a little jittery. But also the Cardinals are, in order to maintain this pace, can't afford to slip either.
Hutch, in just a moment, we'd like to ask you about the Phillies and their chance because we haven't mentioned them. But first, you know, the Squires shop has been Cincinnati's leader in men's fashion for 25 years. And now they have a brand new location at 41 East 4th Street next to Mills Restaurant. Herb Rubel's Squires shop continues to be Cincinnati's leader, specialist in fine men's attire. They feature 3G Clothing, the famous Sussex line, their own original designs in dress shirts, Italian knits, sports coats, and sweaters. At Herb Rubel's Squires shop, you get the same expert service, tailors, and courteous salesmen that have made the name Squires synonymous with quality for the past 25 years. Herb Rubel's Squires shop is behind the Reds 100%, and just to add a little incentive, they're going to give the Reds winning pitcher plus any Reds home run hitter a merchandise order worth $50, good for any item in the store. The Reds will celebrate winning the pennant dressed in style with clothes from Herb Rubel's Squires shop, Cincinnati's leading specialist in finer men's attire. Remember the new location, 41 East 4th Street next to Mills Restaurant. Squires means quality. Hutch, what about the Phils at this point?
Well, of course, as I mentioned just previously there, that they're having a tough time of it right now. They have Johnny Callison sick, and Dennis Bennett's arm is stiffened up on him. So they've had to shorten up in their pitching, and with Callison out of there, it does create a problem for them. And also with these losses, that begins to prey on them some. They've got a good ball club, though.
Hutch, thank you very much for the visit, and we hope these next few days will bring you the height of success for 1964, a National League pennant.
Well, thank you, Paul. I'm real pleased with the ball club and what they've done.
Fred Hutchinson visiting with us here on Diamond Dope. Ladies and gentlemen, we invite you to stay tuned for the ball game. Wait, we'll be back with Star of the Game here on WCKY.
After the series, the Reds sat 6.5 back with 14 games left, and then went on the road and went on a tear. They swept the first-place Phillies in 3 games. And in the final game of the series, Veda Pinson drove in 4 runs and hit 2 home runs, leading the Reds to a 6-4 victory. The Reds now trailed the Phils by only 3.5 games. It was then on to New York for 5 games with the Mets. Yes, that's right, a 5-game series, including a Sunday doubleheader. Meanwhile, the first-place Phillies had a 4-game set at home versus Milwaukee. The Reds swept the Mets in all 5 games. They left New York 1 game up on the Phillies for the NL pennant with 5 games left. It was an improbable and incredible run in September. When the Reds returned from their road trip, thousands of fans were there to greet them at the airport. It was mass hysteria. In fact, a second ramp had to be called in at the cabin door so the Reds could exit the plane. The Reds had won 12 of their last 13 games, while the Phillies lost 8 of their last 10. So now, we're back at Crosley Field for 3 versus the Pirates and 2 versus the Phillies to close out the season. It's a 3-team race that would go down to the wire. National League officials were even setting up scenarios where there would be tiebreakers in place if there was a 3-way tie. So on September 29th, the Reds lost the opening game to the Pirates 2-0. And then on the 30th, they lost a heartbreaker. The score was 0-0 as Bob Friend of the Pirates and Billy McCool of the Reds were in an epic pitcher's duel. With 2 outs in the 9th inning, the Pirates' Bill Mazeroski lined a bases-loaded single into left field to score the only run the Pirates would need. The Reds lost 1-0. Meanwhile, the Cardinals beat the Phillies and moved into first place, with the Reds now 1 game back and the Phillies 2.5 games back. The following day, on October 1st, the Reds salvaged the final game of a 3-game series, winning 5-4 and moving a half a game back. An unlikely hero emerged for the Reds in that game. Jim Coker, a 28-year-old journeyman catcher who was purchased from Denver of the Pacific Coast League on August the 23rd, had 3 hits, including a 6th-inning home run that proved to be the game winner. It was now time for the Phillies, the final 2 games of the season. The Reds were a half a game back, the Phillies 2.5 back. The first-place Cards were at home taking on the Mets. In the first game of the series, the Reds were 6 outs away from a very important victory that would eliminate the Phillies and move the Reds into a tie for first place with the Cardinals. Jim O'Toole held a 3-0 lead into the 8th when he gave up a couple of hits. The ball was then passed to 20-year-old rookie Billy McCool, who gave up 4 runs, and the Reds would lose 4-3. So now, going into the final game, the Reds and Cards were tied for first, and the Phillies sat 1 game back. It came down to this: Sunday, October the 4th. The Reds could win out by defeating the Phillies and the Cardinals losing to the Mets. But St. Louis would be champion by winning coupled with the Reds' loss. If the Reds and Cardinals both lose, the Phillies would advance into a triple tie. It was Jim Bunning versus Jim Satoris. But it was all Phillies. And I mean all Phillies. The final score, Philadelphia 10, Cincinnati 0. With the Cardinals winning, the Reds were finished. An incredible season came to a screeching halt on the final game of the season. Reds players were devastated by the loss, but they were even more devastated that they couldn't finish it off for their leader, Fred Hutchinson, who was in attendance at the game. Dick Sisler, acting Reds manager after the game, said, "Sure, I'm disappointed, and so are the players. But I told the players they have nothing of which to be ashamed. They can walk out of this clubhouse with their heads up." He paused, took a moment, looked over at Fred Hutchinson sitting on a couch in the clubhouse. "I just wish that we could have won the pennant for that gentleman over there," as he pointed to Mr. Hutchinson. Hutchinson, who heard him, replied, "I just wish that the players could have won the pennant for themselves." As the reporters started to leave and the Reds started packing their bags, they stopped to say goodbye to Hutch. No one knew it at the time, but it would be the last time Fred Hutchinson would be at Crosley Field. On November 12, 1964, at a Florida hospital, Fred Hutchinson died of cancer at 45 years old. Condolences poured in from all across the baseball world, said a choked-up Johnny Edwards. "If I took the time to tell you all the stories about how much he's helped, it would take all day. We're really going to miss him," said pitcher Jim O'Toole. "He was like a father to me. I had more respect for him than any other man I've ever met in baseball." First baseman Gordy Coleman said he never met a man like Hutchinson. "If he told you something, it was true," Coleman said. "All summer we watched him slowly lose weight and deteriorate, but we kept on hoping he'd lick it. You had to bet on Hutch because he was that kind of fella." Longtime Cincinnati Enquirer sports editor Lou Smith said, "Hutch is gone, but he will live long in the memory of thousands as a standout example of courage. He was not afraid to die, but he fought valiantly to live. I will miss him. He was a dear friend. I'll never forget him." 1964 was an incredible season, but it was bittersweet. It was a fun summer at Crosley Field, but also, in the back of everyone's mind, was the health and well-being of Fred Hutchinson. Thank you so much for taking the time to listen to these podcasts. It's been an incredible journey this summer. I'm Cam Miller. Thanks for listening.